How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000, and in this video we're going to talk about our next major snowstorm that's expected to impact the Ohio Valley as well as the Northeast in the very short-term future. And we're also going to talk about the next pattern that's expected to develop in the United States over the next week or two. And we're going to go location by location on what you should expect from this next major snowstorm in the Northeast and the Midwest. So make sure to stay tuned for even more detailed forecasts for your specific location. So let's first take a look at the current radar, and we clearly see that for the most part the United States is rather dry. Of course, we just saw that this major winter storm moved through the Northeast as well as the Southeast over the past several days, and right around my area in northern New Jersey we saw right around 2 to 3 inches of snowfall, which was just around what we expected in that area. And same goes for many areas in the Northeast. In fact, cities like New York, pretty much the entirety of the major Interstate 95 corridor cities in the Northeast, such as just south of Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Washington D.C., and Baltimore, actually experienced their first snowstorm that produced at least an inch of snow in nearly 2 years. The last time was right around February 13th, at least for New York City. I don't know about the other areas, but I can at least confidently say that it's been 2 years since those cities last saw a snowstorm that brought over an inch of snow to those cities. But now we, of course, just seen this snowstorm bring over an inch of snow to New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington D.C. and Baltimore. So it's definitely very welcome if you're into the snow in those cities. But now it's rather dry, and it's going to be much colder than average throughout the Midwest as well as the Northeast. But taking a look further westward, this is our next major winter storm we're keeping a close eye on that's expected to bring snowfall to the Northeast as early as a Friday time frame. And as you can see, it is bringing some snow showers in the higher elevations, and it's even bringing a mixing right now around Portland, which goes to show you that this storm system is bringing plenty of cold air with it, because it's not every day we see a mixing or snowfall right in the lower elevations of the Pacific Northwest, like Portland or in places like Seattle. But since the temperature is cold enough with this trough, that means that even the areas right up along the coast, even in the lower elevations, you are experiencing some wintry precipitation, which is a little bit more rare because, of course, you're right by the Pacific Ocean, which helps moderate the temperature right around sea level along the coast. But this really goes to show how, like I said, how much cold air there is. We are seeing a heavy amount of rain right around California. Heavy rainfall is now occurring right over San Francisco, Sacramento, and again, this will contribute to our next major winter storm in the Northeast. So now let's go pretty much location by location and determine when you should expect impacts, how much snowfall you should see, and how long this storm system will last over the as it continues ahead further eastward. So first, let's take a look at what the GFS model is forecasting. So it won't really make much of a difference actually, because when it comes to this specific snowstorm I'm about to talk about, both of the computer models are nearly exactly identical when it comes to the strength of this storm system, as well as how much snowfall accumulation on both of the scenarios are expecting. So it doesn't really matter whether I go to European and GFS model. The forecast will remain very similar for the most part, at least within the next 4 days. But let's take a look moving forward. We see that by the Wednesday afternoon time frame, the higher elevations of Utah, Nevada, Idaho, as well as Montana will experience snow showers. You should expect potentially close to a foot of snow, especially a little bit further northward, where you'll get exposed to the snow showers for a little bit longer. And of course, the heavier snow bands will be a little bit further northward thanks to this trough being a little bit further northward. So we're seeing more convective activity, more specifically right around Idaho and Montana, and this should last into the early Thursday time frame for the state of Washington and Oregon. You should begin to see the snowfall continue to head further westward by the time we approach the early Wednesday time frame, and then the snowfall will really become heavy in the Cascades right around Wednesday night, you should expect anywhere between 1 to 2 feet of snow in the higher elevations. And of course, expect mixing right around Portland as well as Seattle from this storm system. Now, as the storm system continues to head further westward, we see that Nebraska and South Dakota will eventually get involved. So will Wyoming, as this won't produce a heavy amount of snowfall in these areas because the jet stream will, or at least the temperature will sort of stabilize in the eastern half of the United States thanks to a ridge that's building that's going to keep this jet stream dip from moving any further southward, and in fact push the jet stream a little bit further northward. So we're going to see the jet stream straighten out and the air stabilize for the most part in the throughout the eastern half of the United States, which is the reason why this storm system isn't expected to really strengthen as much as it could, because if we did see a pretty significant jet stream dip, then we could be talking about maybe a foot of snow in the Northeast from this storm system. But that isn't the case. It will still remain cooler than average throughout the Northeast. So the snowfall you just received likely won't have any meaningful results when it comes to melting. So that snow will still likely stay on the ground for the next several days until this snowstorm moves through. So as we continue to head further and further into the future, we do see a smaller low pressure system develop just in front of this one, and that'll eventually bring some snow showers as early as the Thursday night time frame right around the Great Lakes. You should expect maybe around an inch of snow from at least this swath of snow before it eventually the snowfall eventually moves a little bit further southward, and we see the area of snow consolidate a little more into a smaller, or not smaller, but a more well-defined area to where the heaviest snowfall will concentrate towards. And we see that by Thursday, that's where you should expect the snowfall right around Tennessee, where I'll say Nashville. I almost said Memphis for Central Tennessee. As for Memphis, it seems like it's going to be mainly an ice. Or you might experience wintry mix, but I don't think there's going to be any meaningful accumulation. But that won't be the same for Nashville, where you could maybe experience I wouldn't say much more than an inch, maybe an inch if you're lucky, if you're hoping for snowfall right around Nashville. But it seems like this area of snow won't develop until it's a little bit further eastward of you guys. But as you can see, another snow swath will move to the Midwest, and we should see a pretty large area of light snow showers right over the Ohio Valley, where cities like Louisville, Indianapolis should receive impacts right around the Friday morning time frame for the most part, and it should linger on over Indiana and Illinois until the Friday noon time. For Ohio, it will be a little bit longer, but we see that this snow will eventually approach the Northeast, where by Friday morning we should see snow showers right over Pennsylvania and West Virginia. The snow should eventually move into the Northeast right around Friday afternoon, and this snowfall could become a little bit heavier by the time this approaches the Northeast. The storm system will have strengthened a bit more compared to its strength it was when it was right over the Mississippi River Valley. So we should expect heavier snow bands, of course, associated with a stronger storm system, but for the most part, it'll still be very light snowfall. I'll say it's going to be very similar to the snowstorm we just experienced here in the Northeast, because with this snowstorm, it didn't necessarily bring a heavy amount of snowfall when it comes to the actual snowfall rate, but it just brought a long duration of very light snow, and that leads to a higher that could lead to a high snowfall accumulation total, at least relatively high compared to the light snowfall rate we're expected to see with this snowstorm. I'm expecting a very similar scenario. Temperatures will be much cooler compared to a freezing point, so the snow should be very soft, which is very similar to the snowstorm we just experienced just now. And the impact should pretty much last from Friday afternoon for New Jersey, New York City, Philadelphia, up until I'll say right around midnight by the time we approach Saturday for those cities, before it eventually moves out to sea. But in terms of, you're probably questioning, is there still a possibility that maybe this could strengthen a little bit more to where this would be considered extreme snowstorm for the Northeast? I find it unlikely at this time, because it seems like both of the computer models are very persistent on this idea that this storm system will be relatively weak and weak enough not to bring any major snowfall in a lot of these areas, as the snowfall will mainly be light. And when we see the computer models in this good of an agreement when we're only around 3 days out, it's very difficult to have any significant changes with the forecast. So from what we see right here, this will likely be around the ballpark of what you should expect from this storm system. Now, let's take a look at the actual snowfall accumulation the GFS model is forecasting. And you're going to see that the GFS model is forecasting a relatively large area of right around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall. We do see some areas receive a little bit more, like West Virginia and the southern and even northern portion of Ohio close, but this is more so associated with the great with lake effect snow that would happen after. So if you're right up along the coast of Lake Erie, of course you should expect a little bit more snowfall, closer to a foot of snow. But anywhere else, I expect the general consensus will be that we'll experience maybe around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall for cities like New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and maybe the western portion of southern New England, like Connecticut, and portions of upstate New York. And same goes for Ohio, Indianapolis, and the entirety of the state of Indiana as well. Louisville, and same goes for eastern Tennessee and the extreme western portions and the higher elevations of North Carolina. So that's what you should expect from this storm system. The certainty is very high with this storm system. Doesn't seem like we're going to see enough instability to bring major snowfall, so definitely keep that in mind. But how about after this storm system? What pattern will we see in the United States build as we approach the late portion of January? Well, it seems like the jet stream will definitely start to stabilize and straighten out to the point where we're going to see a little bit more warm air most likely approach the eastern half of the United States by the time we approach the late January timeframe, thanks to a strong amount of ridging that's expected. Because over the past few weeks, we've been seeing a multitude of troughs move through, bring a strong northerly flow with a ridge that's centered right around the Pacific Northwest. But now we're going to begin to see that change where the ridging will build over the eastern half of the United States, and we're going to see a lot more warm air move in, a lot more rain events rather than snow events in the areas further southward, as that seems to be the current consensus from the computer models. We still gotta wait and see. Maybe there is still that possibility that enough cold air stays around for the more populated areas that experience snowfall. But at this point, I think more likely by the time we approach, I'll say, the week of January 24th, we will begin to see more warm air intrude the Northeast. But that doesn't completely rule out the possibility of heavy snowfall for the more populated areas of Northeast, because we still do see a potential snowstorm right around the January 26th timeframe. Of course, it's too far out to say anything for certain if this will actually occur. There's still a lot of time to iron out the forecast, but I'll go more into detail with that once, like I said, the forecast becomes a little bit, the computer models become a little bit more confident with the forecast. So definitely stay tuned over the next week or so for our next potential snowstorm that could develop right around the January 26th timeframe. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.